The Boston Celtics will be starting the regular season short-handed after Danilo Gallinari just recently suffered a torn meniscus. With a few open roster spots still available ahead of the training camp next month, head coach of Boston Celtics, Brad Stevens, still has some options in his hands to add players to the roster in case that is needed. So, what direction could the Celtics go in this situation? A recent report said Boston was considering Carmelo Anthony as a free agent signing on the heels of the Gallinari injury, but they're not the only team wanting the veteran forward, since Knicks also got an interest in him as well. The soaring question now is whether Anthony would make sense as a potential fit for Boston's roster. So let's take a closer look at Anthony and whether these rumors add up when looking at Boston's roster and their big picture priorities. Anthony's pros and cons. Over the years, the 37-year-old has transformed nicely into a role player from an offensive standpoint during his few seasons in both Los Angeles and Portland. His 38% three-point shooting has stayed consistent amongst all those years, and his shots per 36 minutes have decreased to 14, which is a far cry from his days in Denver and New York. What's also worth mentioning is that Anthony shot a career high of 52% from two-point range last year on just 4.7 attempts per game, which is a sign of an overall better shot selection after feasting on mid-range jumpers for years with mixed success. Now, while we could say that those skills would be useful to help fill out the hole of injured Gallinari offensively, Anthony's defensive liabilities are more glaring than ever. He's consistently targeted by opposing offenses, and it's anything but a coincidence that during his last 3 seasons, his teams have finished 30th, 29th, and 21st in defensive rating, which is nowhere near the top. Knowing that, and knowing that Boston was built on the strength of its defense last year, Anthony would be a concern every time he stepped on the floor. Celtics alternatives. Presuming Al Horford maintains his spot in the starting 5 this season at the 4, reserve power forward is actually one of the deeper spots on Boston's roster. Before Gallinari went down, him and Grant Williams were expected to split time off the bench at power forward this season, but of course now things will have to change. However, the Celtics also locked up some younger depth in this area back in July when inking second-year forward Sam Hauser to a 3-year contract. The team seems very high on the 24-year-old undrafted sharpshooter who knocked down 43% of his threes during his rookie year in limited action. I'm not making any comparisons here, but that's Curry level, of course on a much smaller time interval. Bringing in a veteran like Anthony would probably eliminate the possibility that Hauser develops well in extended action presented by Gallinari's injury. It's obvious that Anthony is way more proven, but Hauser's numbers from last year show a better 3-point shooting percentage, and it won't be hard for him to defend better than Anthony either. With that said, bringing in a veteran like Anthony who will be pushing to play is far from a no-brainer when it's not clear he's a better player than some youth on the roster. Boston's got a number of other bigs that could also play some power forward in the mix for training camp spots if needed. I'm talking about the likes of Noah and Bruno. There are also some other players like Broderick Thomas and Justin Jackson that are experienced with Boston's system and could agree to deals with the Celtics as well. Those guys don't necessarily have the offensive upside that Anthony does as a role player, but could be better fitted to the team's scheme. With all that said, Anthony will surely find a landing spot next year somewhere after putting up solid numbers for Lakers last season, but bringing in Anthony doesn't make a lot of sense for Boston in a part of the roster with plenty of younger available alternatives.